Hello, Consciously Parenting family, and welcome to the Conscious Coffee Break. I'm Jen Kobrick. I'm a holistic family consultant with the Consciously Parenting Project, and today we're talking about how we wish things had gone. So if you're familiar with our Healing Stories framework, if you've been to a Healing Story Circle call, or read anything on the blog, or listened to some of the podcast episodes that our founder, Rebecca, did on the subject, and you've heard us talk about healing stories, then you know that when something goes wrong and there's big feelings, that we follow this framework of slowly telling the story of what happened and allowing space in that telling for feelings, for movement that needs to happen in the body. And we do this with our children on the daily basis with small things, small disappointments and frustrations. And we can do this to process big things like birth trauma or divorce, any of the big things that may come up in life as well. We generally recommend doing this with support. For small things that may not be as necessary, one-on-one with a child. For big things, it is certainly necessary, especially big things where we have our own experience that was difficult as part of it. And when we talk about doing these healing stories, the last piece, and the piece that is most often forgotten or left out or overlooked, the last piece is telling the story of how we wish it had gone. And so today I'm going to talk about why that piece is actually really, really important. It's really important for us, and it's really important for our kids. And it's important for everyone for three reasons. The first reason is because it allows space for other feelings. We typically have feelings attached to how we wish things had gone. And those feelings may not completely get processed in the telling of how things actually did. The naming of explicitly that this is not what I wanted to happen, or not what you wanted to happen, perhaps in the case of a smaller thing like a disappointment for the child. The second reason this is really important is because it allows the space for repair and reconnection, versus just, okay, this thing happened and it happened and there it is. The piece about how we wish it had gone is the piece that opens up the space to repair and reconnect. And then the third piece is that it rewires our brain for how we wish something had gone. So let's talk about these three a little bit more here. So the first, that it allows space for feelings about how the situation went. So for example, if we're talking about something like a child has tried to do something and instead of doing the thing they set out to do, they fell and scraped their knee and now they're really upset. So telling the story of, oh, you fell, you hurt your knee, that can help the child feel really seen, really understood. It can create a space in which they feel safe to cry if they need to cry about how that hurt. It can help them feel like we're really there taking care of them, and all of that is important. And it's also really important that we acknowledge the piece of, you really wanted to accomplish that thing. You really wanted to do this, because what the child wanted was to succeed, right? They wanted to, knock it out of the park on their first try. They didn't want to fall down and get hurt. And acknowledging that piece then allows space for other feelings about not having accomplished their goal. And likewise, when it's something that more directly involves us, that we are likely to have similar feelings about something not going the way that we wanted it to, something not working out the way that we planned. We're likely to experience grief, disappointment, frustration, sadness. And sometimes it feels like leaving off this piece of not acknowledging how we wish something had gone would be easier, because then we wouldn't have to feel those feelings. And the reality is that those feelings are there. whether or not we acknowledge and make space for them. And they tend to fester. And so without this piece of acknowledging how we wish something had gone, we end up sometimes being stuck with, we tell the story and we make space for the feelings about the things that did happen that we maybe weren't happy with. And then we feel maybe a bit better, or at least a bit more integrated. But then these other feelings have festered, they stay there under the surface of this, but that's not how I wanted it to be. And so we end up back there needing to tell the story again and process through this again. And it never really quite feels resolved. And even if we're doing this piece with with how we wish things gone, many times we need to tell the story more than once. It's not that it necessarily we're finishing in one telling regardless, but without this piece of acknowledging what we wanted to have happen, it just kind of never feels finished. It kind of, that desire, that wish stays there and festers under the surface, and kind of keeps us from fully processing what happened and moving forward. So it's really important that we uncover the uncomfortable feelings that are there about how we wish things had gone and allow space for those feelings as well. So the second way that this is really important is about creating a space for reconnection and repair. And this is in particular about when we're sharing a story about something maybe that we wish we had done differently. For example, if we're working on trying to stop yelling at our child when we're upset, and then we do, inevitably, because we're human, and our child's upset, and we tell this story, we tell the story of what happened and that we yelled, and we make space for how upset they feel about that. And then we just kind of, again, we leave it dangling and it doesn't quite feel finished unless we then say, I wish I had handled this situation in this other way instead. And that opens up the space for us and the child, or us and a partner, or us and a coworker, or any situation in which this is relevant, to then connect around how we wish it had gone. Connect in the way that we would have felt if we had done it that way in the first place. And sometimes, particularly with children, we want to actually, sort of replay it, sort of say, okay, you lie back down on the ground and pretend that you're, refusing to do whatever and flail around and scream, and I'll come handle it the way I wish I had handled it in the first place. And that can be really powerful with children. And sometimes we have the opportunity to actually do a redo with other people as well, depending on the situation. But even if we can't, we can connect with them about how we wish it had gone. And we can also make clear that we not only understand that what we did wasn't okay, wasn't the right way to handle something, but also that we do actually know what to do in the future. Because without that, it can feel like, okay, well, you're a jerk, but you're just going to keep being a jerk. You're aware that what you're doing is not okay, but you're just going to keep doing it anyway. So this last piece of how I wish I had handled that gives us the chance to repair fully and make it clear that we're going to do something different. We're going to make every effort to do something different going forward in the future. And then the last way that this is really important is that it helps us rewire our own brains so that we actually do it differently the next time. When we're talking about something like that example of trying to stop yelling at your kids when they're upset, or when you're upset, If we just say, I'm sorry I yelled, and that's it, the chances are we're still going to yell the next time, because the reason that this is a habit we're trying to break is because it's something we've done a lot of times. So it's wired deeply as an automatic reaction. And even if we tell ourselves, I'm not going to do that next time, that doesn't really do anything to the wiring in our brains. But if we instead say, and especially if we say it out loud and share that with the people around us, then we're giving our brains practice, essentially. If we're saying, next time, I want to take a deep breath and, whack my pillow a couple of times. And then we practice that, then we are much more likely to be able to do that the next time, because that wiring is now also there in our brains. And so rather than just saying, I yelled, I'm not going to do that next time, substituting that with, I yelled, and this is what I want to do instead. A specific action, an actual substitute, rather than just a lack of doing something. And so the more we practice that, the more we practice how we wish it went, the more likely it is for our brain to be able to actually follow that pathway in the heat of the moment when we're actually trying to do it differently, so that the next time maybe we won't need to do so much repair. So I hope this was helpful. If you want to understand more about healing stories, if you're new to this framework, then I will include a link to a short on-demand course about healing stories that you can listen to at your own pace and learn about what this framework looks like at different ages and different kinds of situations. And I will see you next week on the coffee break.